feature presentation.
Welcome back to the Cast of Us, an untitled HBO's The Last of Us podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he's not allergic to mushrooms, Eric Marchin.
Matt, it's time to get the load out. Mark Mylod.
Mark Mylod. Yes, today we are reviewing and recapping Season 2, Episode 2 of The Last of Us, Through the Valley, directed by Mark Mylod and written by Craig Mazin.
Yep.
Eric, we're here. So everyone,
Buckle up.
spoilers. This show we're recapping the episode. So by God, if you haven't watched episode 2 of The Last of Us, please go do so before you continue, because we are about to spoil the shit out of it. And a 3 and a 2 and a 1. Eric, they did it in episode 2.
They killed him.
They killed
absolutely killed him.
R.I.P. I knew this was coming. I didn't know we would get it so soon. I was very I guess I wasn't surprised, because they're sticking pretty closely to the timeline of the game. We'll go over what has changed and what was different, which is a lot of it is different. But the death of Joel being very early on in The Last of Us Part 2, they've stuck to. I've wondered for a while if they would maybe rearrange things to have Pedro Pascal in this entire season, and then
he's everywhere right now, Matt.
And he is, so it only made sense where he knew Last of Us would be a role that he didn't necessarily have to do in the super long term. But I was wondering if they would maybe hold this for the season finale somehow, or kind of rearrange the story. But they are sticking. It really is the crux of the whole story. So I feel like you kind of have to do it.
Well, it's Ellie's motivation for what she's going to do next, right?
Exactly. It's the whole cycle of violence, the whole, hate through love, and all of this
Does
stuff.
one wrong make a right?
Exactly. And just kind of repeating the same things through different people it is the big moment of The Last of Us Part 2. And I think a shocking moment. I think for people who had no idea it was coming, it probably felt like a Game of Thrones kind of moment, Red Wedding, kind of killing off a main character so soon in the series. I've heard,
or Sean Bean in
Sean Bean in the first season of Game of Thrones, right? So it's something like that. I think it's akin to that kind of stuff. And I feel like I haven't talked to many people who haven't played the game yet, and I've stayed off seeing opinions online. I wasn't online on Sunday. I was watching WrestleMania and Leafs playoff hockey, so I haven't seen what the non-gamers think. From what I've seen, it's like most people, it's a shocking thing, but that happens in TV shows. And I think that, yes, you might be upset that they killed off this character that you've loved, just like Ellie did, and it's a complicated relationship, and he's a complicated man. And Pedro Pascal's amazing, and he's amazing as that character, but
you have to do Fantastic Four.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get that out of the way right away. We'll go through beat by beat, but how did you feel about this episode in general, Eric?
It's a very good episode. Yeah, to your point, I was thinking from what we were seeing through marketing, the way that Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann were talking about this season and calling it The Empire Strikes Back. My thought was, they're going to wait and have this at the very end of the season, and have that as the cliffhanger where they do that. And then, they set things up for the third season. But what you were saying, where following that timeline, they've been very close. I think that first episode is like this false sense of security, of feeling as though like, maybe they're not doing that, and maybe they're going a different direction, because like you have said, there are many changes in the show compared to the video game, to the point where, we'll get into this more. Like I was talking to my hairdresser actually, and she was mentioning that her husband, who's a big fan of the game as well, that it wasn't Tommy that was because Isabella Merced's character Dina
Yeah.
is with Joel
Joel.
when
Yeah.
they get sort of captured and held at gunpoint. It's Tommy in the game, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that where it's like they're still changing things obviously
And the
to
whole Jackson attack is brand new. That
yeah.
doesn't happen in the game either. So that is a whole brand new element.
Reminded me of The Thing a little bit with the flamethrower, you know, when
Oh, it's
Kurt
great.
Russell
Yeah,
kills
obviously they're
Windows.
taking from, even being in the snow and all that kind of stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I thought it was an excellent episode. I thought the Jackson attack, definitely people last season were like, "Oh, there's not enough infected." Well, they're like, "Well, here's." It reminded me of that sequence, when they all come out of the ground in the first season, that horde attack, um, in season 1, but this even more so. The sequence with Abby kind of crawling under the fence as she's being kind of chased, I think is really awesome. It's
That is
straight
my
from the
favorite scene of this. Like, I know the Joel thing is
yeah,
devastating. To me, that sequence of the gate closing in on her as she's crawling through, and then you have, the infected crawling behind her, that claustrophobia is so visceral
yeah,
that that's the scene that stands out to me in terms of just being a well-directed sequence. Caitlin Dever really sells that scene, and obviously, the emotional aspect of what is going on when she, kills Joel, and, that's a conversation that I think we were talking a little bit before, but I mean, reading that she shot that scene just days after her mother's funeral, I
yeah.
can't imagine what someone is going through in that and doing that and what they're feeling. But yeah, Caitlin Dever is incredible, and obviously you're supposed to hate her in that moment and what she's
Yeah, of
doing.
course, but I
But
think
you
you
also
also
you
yeah.
feel as though, okay, well, am I a hypocrite because Joel has done some pretty horrible
The
things
exact same thing, right?
to other
It's
people? We just haven't seen it all the
well, you gotta
time,
see
right?
the cycle is like Joel kills Abby's father, that
But
it's
even
revealed in
before
this
then, right?
episode,
There are stories
and
when we hear about like
of
Anna
Joel
and
not a good
Joel and
person. Yeah, I
yeah.
know. But then on top of that, Ellie is witnessing Abby killing her father, essentially,
Yeah.
right, with Joel. So it's this kind of cycle, uh and then even the reasoning of why Joel did what he did, why Abby does what she does, and ultimately we'll see what Ellie does moving forward. But yeah, it's I thought that whole sequence plays out pretty differently too. Like Abby doesn't reveal it was her father in that sequence in the game. That's revealed much later. So they are, I wouldn't say spoon feeding you. They're just giving you more context and probably trying to get you to sympathize with Abby a bit earlier, where the game kind of played that out as a bit of a mystery. Like she's ultimately still portrayed as the villain here, but it is a complicated situation where, Druckmann and Mazin have talked about on their podcast for episode 1, even that if this story was told from Abby's perspective and you saw her perspective from season 1, Joel would be the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Like Joel would be the villain. So, and if you got to know Abby and her dad, which, we'll see throughout the series, what happens. But I think that's what makes that game and this story so interesting, and what we loved about season 1 and why I love this game is that everyone's a bad guy and everyone's a good guy, and there are no bad guys and good guys,
Where
and
you're the
like
hero
it's
of your own
yeah.
story, you're the villain of someone
Yes,
else's,
exactly, which is
right?
a classic trope, and
Can
I
I ask
think
you a question with
please, yeah.
Abby? And maybe you've answered this before in the past, and this isn't a spoiler to the show. This is a spoiler maybe to to the game.
Sure.
Do you get to know her father in any like physical capacity, like in scenes and in gameplay at all?
Um, if you guys don't wanna know anything about the game, maybe bow out for 10 seconds. Yes, you do.
Okay,
Um,
because I think that's gonna make that
yeah,
impactful, because that
yeah.
is the one thing I
You
think
don't know
is
anything about him,
missing.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
it just feels like, oh, it's another not to say that, like, any human life is, not to be, disregarded, but like when he kills the doctor at the end of season 1, it just kind of feels like, oh, it's another person he
But
kills.
then that's what it felt like in the first game, dude,
Yeah.
and then the
But then
second
also it's
game,
like,
like
okay, well, what's making Abby's story more important than one of the other Fireflies that were killed that probably had maybe they had family, you know?
And that's the whole thing.
Yep.
You don't know. Maybe that's Last of Us Part 3. Maybe that's, something that happens in Part 2 will trigger that, right? Like that's this world that they're living in. Anyone could have the exact same story as Abby or Ellie or Joel or anything. Yeah, there's the one thing of Ellie being, immune, and that playing a huge part into Joel's decision, and even the Fireflies' decision of what they were going to do to Ellie. Um, so that triggers all that. But yeah, I think it makes for such a complicated, interesting, dynamic between all the characters, and just makes for really deep, interesting characters as they reveal more about them. Right. And I think the more, we'll see how much we learn about Abby this season, or,
I mean, we've already learned, like, we know personally, but we're
I know
talking now from
I'm trying to play, what
you're
I mean,
playing
just
a
play along.
character.
Play along, dude. So, yeah, I just thought I thought it was excellent. I think giving more context of, I think that's been a criticism from some people, where the game they thought had, even though the game was criticized for the same reason of dropping you in and you having to, you know, play as Abby at the beginning, even during this sequence. Like you're playing as Abby during the sequence leading up to Joel's death in the game. Like you're controlling her, and that's when you meet up with Joel. Like all those sequences, like with the fence and her running away from the horde, like you're playing as Abby in those sequences, right? So in the game, you're like, why the fuck am I playing as this person? And then that person is the person who kills Joel, and you were the person who led that. Like you're controlling her to lead her to kill Joel. And at that point, you have no idea why Abby did what she did. So she's almost even more villainized in the game because of it. And then you get more as you go on. So it's interesting that they kind of just
That they're upfront with her motivations.
Yes, yeah.
Because it does feel like maybe, I don't know if it's like, obviously, a video game is still a different medium from television, and maybe having those motivations and reasoning and you understand. I totally understand why Abby did what she did. Do I agree with it? No. Am I upset with it? Absolutely.
Well, same with what Joel did at the end of
No,
season one, right?
definitely, definitely. But you also understand the motivations. And I think maybe that's important. You mentioned spoon feeding. I don't think it's spoon feeding either. I do think maybe, though, there was a little bit of I mentioned this in the first episode that we recorded for season 2, maybe bracing for impact, just because of how, from everything you've told me, the reaction was so strong and so negative that maybe, if you're forthright with somebody, or if you tell them up front that this is how it's going to go, it maybe is easier to swallow.
But people are still going to be upset, right?
Oh, definitely. But I think people will also now understand.
You hope so.
They
I've
understand.
already heard...
Where if they didn't know the reasoning behind it, they would be like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, and that was the game. So
but now they're like, "Oh, I'm still upset about it, but at least I get why she's doing what she's doing."
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I thought a wild thing to drop in season 2, episode 2, but I mean, it was a wild thing to do in the game. It was very early on in the game, and a heartbreaking moment, and we'll go through the episode beat by beat. So we actually
bad choice of words, beat by beat.
I mean, yeah,
Caddyshack.
So, Jesus, yeah, I know. I've never looked at a golf club the same since playing the game.
Happy Gilmore.
Jeez. So we start there's been a lot of golf jokes over the last 5 years since the game came out, but so we start the episode with Abby having a dream sequence of her back at the hospital in Salt Lake City, walking through the, red illuminated hallways, as she's approaching the surgery room. She's younger, she's 19 at this moment, and then she kind of sees herself, her present day self, telling her not to go into the room.
Go back.
She's
His brains
like,
are on the floor.
Exactly. Yeah. So and then as she wakes up, we see her at this lodge that they're holding up at. We saw at the end of episode 1 that Abby and her crew were approaching Jackson in the evening, and now we see that they're sheltering at this lodge in the mountains, looking down on Jackson. I think Owen has come back.
Literally and figuratively, they're looking down
Yeah,
at Jackson.
exactly. So they realize that Jackson is much bigger than they thought it was at night. They realize that they fully have
It's a
power,
major
that
city.
and they're reinforced. They have
Power
basically an
lines.
army going around and guarding all of the entrances, power
Forming
lines, yeah.
gates.
Recon missions to make sure that nothing's, no one can get in. So they just realize that it is a giant, city that is in the middle of this mountain range. Um, so they focus on wanting to find Joel. Abby's crew with Owen are trying to figure out if it's the best, plan of attack to just try to go into Jackson. I know at one moment Owen goes like, he tries to reassure Abby that they're going to do it and stuff like that. But when Abby goes out on her own to kind of scope out Jackson, he tells out the group that he's just going to try to convince her to go back, because the only thing that's going to happen if they try to get Joel is that they're all going to end up dead. Because they don't really have like a great plan to get through Jackson's security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a little disappointed that they didn't play Outcast. Sorry, Miss Jackson.
Sure. That should have been the end credits song.
I
of the
am
episode.
for real.
So then we go back into Jackson. And then this is when Jesse knocks on Ellie's door, right? And wakes her up for
Yep.
patrol. So yeah, Jesse knocks on Ellie's door. Ellie wakes up. This is the night after,
Or the morning after the night. Yeah.
morning after the New Year's Eve party the night before, where the encounter with Seth happened. Joel went back to his home, and Ellie passed him on the porch as he was drinking coffee and playing the guitar on the porch. So
And Jesse gives Ellie a bit of a hard time about the kiss with,
but then ultimately goes, I don't
Dina.
really care.
But then
So-
also, I think that's really good character development in terms of showing like these two people are friends and they're very comfortable and not adversaries in any way, and that they respect each other and
but like to give each other shit and
Yeah.
kind of so at this point he says that he is going to go on patrol with Ellie, but Ellie says she wants to go on patrol with Joel, which I think, I loved watching this a second time because I'm excited to I don't want to say too much, but like there was so much more I got from it watching a second time too, like little character moments that I thought were great. Like, just little things like she tells Jesse like, oh, I want to go out with Joel. And then he's like, are you guys good now? Cause like after last night, it looks like they were, it was, they had this public outburst in front of everyone.
well, especially from what we've seen.
Exactly.
Right? And then
That's
you
what I
think
mean,
about
yeah.
what we will see.
Yeah. And I just think that that's so brilliant. Like in that moment, you're watching this and you're like, wait a minute, they were on super bad terms when we last
Just
left
walked
them
on
in the
by
last
while he was
episode.
playing the guitar.
Yeah, and
like
now
a sad
she's saying,
man.
oh, I want to go on patrol with him. We're good. Fuck off. Don't ask me any more questions. Like, it's between us. We're always Joel and Ellie. Like, stop fucking, getting into my business. So then Jesse informs Ellie that Joel has already gone out with Dina, and because he told Jesse just let Ellie sleep in a little bit. We then cut back to Abby, who's on the mountaintop, kind of scoping out Jackson by herself. And a storm is rolling into Jackson as well. Everyone goes, oh, we don't really have to worry about it. Things like that. I think this is when, do we get the sequence in the restaurant or do we get Abby out there? Sorry, I maybe either way.
Well, I mean, you're talking about when
Ellie, Tommy's giving the speech to everyone about prepping for an attack, just kind of doing drills and things like that. Tommy's kind of telling everyone, prep. This is what could happen.
Don't be a hero.
What should we do if we do get attacked by a horde? People go up on the rooftops,
or hide
elderly
into
and children
the basements,
go hide in basements,
cellars.
How to prep. And then everyone goes, oh, or is this just a drill? And he's like, well, it's a drill until it happens. Right.
Yeah. And you see, again, that's really great character stuff because you're seeing Tommy come into his own. Right.
Yeah.
As
he is the leader of Jackson. Right. So it's,
Not to be confused with Tim Blake Nelson, who's also the
Sure.
leader.
So then we have Ellie. Jesse says to Ellie, you have to go to the restaurant because Maria wants to talk to you, essentially. And then Maria brings Ellie. There's a great moment where Tommy's still doing his kind of speech and Ellie tries to talk to Maria and she's like, shut the fuck up. Like he's talking.
Yeah.
And then brings her over to Seth, who is in the kitchen. He works at the restaurant. Maria basically makes Seth apologize for the night before. Seth says he had a little bit too much to drink, and he said things that he should have never even thought, let alone said. Ellie doing her classic, teenager, like, fuck you, you were a piece of shit to me. Like, sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess
okay.
alcohol made you a
Yeah.
bigot,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why. You're like, oh yeah, you definitely never thought of that before that moment. So Ellie kind of just brushes him off and says, yeah, okay, whatever. And then he makes them steak sandwiches.
I wrote that down. That's important.
Yeah,
That's
to
key.
take out. It was very wrapped very nicely. So
especially
yeah,
in that certain situation of a dystopian era, getting those.
I will say Jackson has a lot of guns, a lot of bullets, and somehow a lot of food to feed all these people. So
yeah.
But I know that they have cattle probably that they're breeding and stuff like that too. But like it's
well, they also talk about being like a town where they trade a lot of stuff, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
it's you're trading for things, and so you have to make it worth it. And so, there's probably like the council is thinking about like what are the things that we need and what do we trade with, immigrants that are coming in and people that are, seeking refuge, and like it's a trading in a barter system, right?
Yeah. So Ellie and Jesse go out on their patrol.
Oh my God, Matt, I just thought of something funny. This could have been like this whole thing. It's like, I wish that I had Jesse's girl.
Yeah. That's really good. I love that. I thought you were gonna make like a 7-Eleven taquitos weed joke, but
No,
we'll
I
get
did
there.
write down the 7-Eleven full of weed, Matt's favorite.
Yeah, definitely. Give me some taquitos and a Slurpee and I'm good to go. Yeah, so Jesse and Ellie go out on patrol. The storm, Jesse kind of goes out, don't worry about it. It'll probably just be in the mountains, or maybe Ellie says that. They go out. Uh, Abby is we now cut back to Abby, which is what I was mentioning. She's scoping out Jackson with some binoculars up on the mountain. She starts to climb down the side of the mountain. Maybe not the best choice in this this ridge of this mountain to try to get a better look at Jackson or get closer. As she is climbing down, she slips down the mountainside and kind of tumbles down the side of this mountain or hill. It's not like a huge mountain, but
This
it's
is this is the only time where I
Yeah.
did find it a little bit almost like weirdly comedic and cartoonish.
How she slid down? Or?
Yeah, and well, how it's leading her to where she needs to be next.
Yeah.
As like a character moment. Because what I also like about when she's going out on patrol and kind of scoping out the area, and it's just a little thing, but the sound design of the wind and the coldness of the location, like
Yeah.
you really feel the
Especially
environment.
later, the frostbite in Joel's face and stuff like that. And even how Abby's reacting and Jesse and Ellie on their patrol. Like
She's from Seattle, right? So like she's probably not used to some of this weather. She's used to probably the cold, but maybe not this kind of frigid
it looks fucking
temperature.
frigid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Abby slides down the mountainside and falls into a pile of dead, infected, or so
Frozen.
we think. Frozen infected. There was a
I love my
throwaway
infected
line.
Frozen.
There was a throwaway line earlier that there was a small horde of about 30 infected that they found, which is why they're all prepping for a possible kind of attack, because they were seemingly using the dead infected as insulation to kind of hibernate almost, like the ones that were still kind of active. So as Abby falls down the mountainside, she lands on this pile and then triggers almost this, not an avalanche, but basically awakens this horde of infected that were hibernating under this pile of bodies.
It's like a minefield, basically. Like you
Yeah.
trigger something and it kind of awakens the whole thing.
Well, even the stuff in the clay pipes back in Jackson, that what you're saying. It's almost like a minefield that triggers them to, and we'll get to that point, which comes up
Well, because
momentarily.
I thought about this with Sinners too. Obviously, we're not talking about Sinners here, but like the horde mind, the hive mind
hive mind,
mentality, where like they're all
and
connected.
spreading like an infection,
Yeah.
right? Like, or like a disease. Like it's very similar.
There's no spitting in the mouth though.
I wish.
Goodness.
So Abby awakens this horde. She's running away from all of them. The storm is coming in. Jesse and Ellie have to take shelter in a abandoned, well, I guess everything's abandoned at this point.
Could you imagine
if just the one 7-Eleven still running?
Remember the Red Dawn
like,
remake where they go into
the
Subway?
Subway while Russia's invading them or whatever. Sorry,
and
North
it's
Korea
perfectly
or whatever it is.
working, and he's just like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that scene is absurd. It's like the Power Rangers scene in the Krispy Kreme as well.
Yeah.
Like it's certain product placement things. And I know I've said that, you notice a CVS pharmacy in Jackson as well. That's obviously just an old building that they've taken over and stuff like that. They probably still run it as the town pharmacy, but I love seeing stuff like that. And we didn't get much of that in the game because they didn't have any license for any of it. So,
well, last episode had the Bud Light can, right?
Exactly.
Like,
the bottle, which the bottles, throwing bottles are a big part of the game. I forgot to mention that, but
that's my favorite Adele song, Chasing Pavements, Throwing Bottles.
The 7-Eleven thing, that's Eugene's weed
emporium.
Yeah, basically is much different in the game. It's discovered at a different point. Ellie and Dina discover it. Here it's in a 7-Eleven. There it was just in I forget, like maybe in the grocery store or something like that. I forget exactly where it was. But
7-Eleven is a nice touch. Like
it's great. And just nice character development for Eugene, who was mentioned in the previous episode, who was Catherine O'Hara's husband, who she revealed Joel had to kill him, we presume because he was infected, and then that's confirmed here. I think Jesse talks about Eugene and being
but it makes me think that shouldn't Catherine O'Hara's character Gail inherit the weed emporium?
Well, I don't think she knew about it. Remember, he said like, oh, he didn't want Gail to know,
yeah.
Even though Gail mentions that Eugene would have the stickiest weed in the last episode.
She loves that sticky weed.
So I think good character moments here between Jesse and Ellie as well. Pay attention to how Ellie's reacting to a lot of the conversation with Eugene. I thought, again, rewatching it, I was like, there's such great moments from Bella Ramsey where they have such a great performance here, a subtle performance that I think will, just pay attention to that kind of stuff. It's really, really great.
And it makes you want to go back and rewatch it. Like that's the thing. Like it has a rewatchability of you can, you obviously are taking it all in the first time around as you're watching it and you get the big beats and you feel it. But like you're saying, like you're really starting to pick up on those things that
the little things
we'll talk about more as we go on through the series, but it just makes you appreciate like the writing. Cause obviously as well, like this is, telling a story like this sometimes is out of continuity because it's based on memories sometimes. And so you'll have episodes where there will be a flashback or things like that. And we've seen that in season 1. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have importance in the moments that are in the present either, and I feel like you're seeing that, like everything you're mentioning, it's like, oh yeah, okay, the Eugene thing, it adds even more, not just context to it, but it adds more of an impact to how you're going to feel about Joel and about Ellie and about Gail and there's a complexity to everything here.
Yeah, it's definitely worth, after you've watched the season, to go back. I highly, highly suggest it. So Jesse and Ellie are held up at the 7-Eleven. We have Tommy, who is panicking a little bit back in Jackson because he can't get in contact with Joel and Dina. Because now we have
every 3 seconds.
The storm has come in. It's a blizzard. It's frigid. Joel and Dina are out on patrol. Jesse and Ellie are out on patrol. They're held up at the 7-Eleven. Abby has awoken this horde. No one really knows that the horde has been awoken yet, except for Abby, who is running away from the horde. we have her running, trying to get away from them. There's an amazing sequence that we've already mentioned of Abby running away, climbing over a thing, going through a fenced area, and it's straight from the game, which is awesome. The fence kind of collapses in on her,
And she
and
has to
she's
crawl through.
yeah, crawl through as all the infected are kind of trying to get through the fence. And I love how relentless they are. Like you can tell they have one purpose, and one purpose is to feed, right? And like they'll do whatever. And we'll talk about that when they attack
Are they
Jackson.
feeding though, or are
Um,
they seeding?
yeah, I guess seeding is a better term, right? Like it's not necessarily like the classic zombie thing of needing to eat brains, but they more want to infect other people to spread this kind of
Yeah, they want to create an
infection.
even
Like,
bigger,
yeah,
the
network,
disease
right?
wants to grow.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a great sequence of like a gory moment of their hand going through the chain link fence, and just absolutely just very tense stuff, and really, really good shit
Very
here.
well directed.
Yeah. So we have Abby running through, and I might be mixing up all this stuff, but this is all there's like kind of three panes of action here with Jesse and Ellie, Abby, who then we'll get to with Joel and Dina, and then what's happening at Jackson. So, um, as Abby's running away, she connects with Joel and Dina. So, again, this is the one thing where I'm like, all right, it's convenient, right?
Yes,
Like,
in terms of the story, like they're
yeah,
because they've been talking about in episode 1 and even in this episode, we don't know who Joel is, and we only have the first name and a very basic description of him being older and handsome, and that is it. And so,
and
when it all
yeah,
works out, it just kind of feels like, okay, there's a is that like is that the same thing that happens in the game where like
yeah,
it all,
because you're
yeah.
playing as Abby. Abby's running away from this horde. I know they set it up that Joel goes on these patrols and things like that. Like I understand that part of it, but it's just very convenient. My suspension of disbelief is fine with it. It's just like, all right, they needed a way for them to kind of cross paths, and they clearly weren't getting into Jackson. So,
And they probably like
um,
Craig Mazin probably knows this as well. Like he's
yeah,
probably thinking to himself, like, okay, I get it. And it's sometimes the thing that you have to, let go and be okay with. Cause I think like a lot of people that aren't, obsessive about Last of Us
aren't
or
gonna pay attention.
storytelling or
Yeah.
structure, the thing that they're thinking in that moment isn't, oh, that's convenient, is,
It's
oh,
like,
I'm
"Oh,
concerned
shit."
for
Yeah,
Joel.
exactly, and I think that's the intention. So sometimes I think you throw away the, suspension of disbelief of like, "Okay, well, they probably wouldn't just randomly bump into each other in this moment," but for the sake of a good storytelling and a good moment between someone who's looking for a person, sometimes convenience is, your best option because it's just
Well,
best
that's
for
why it's
what's
called
the
suspension
story.
of disbelief,
Yeah.
right? It's suspension, but it's also suspense.
Exactly. So I think it adds to the story and is ultimately, worth it for, maybe for a moment you're like, well, okay. But then it because of that suspense of going, fuck, he just randomly he's helping this young woman, much like he's helping Dina or helping Ellie. But it's ultimately going to be his demise. And you just know there's a sense of dread from that moment onward, right? And I remember that in the game as well. So
And I guess also
it's
you think about it as well, like after having watched the episode, if you're unfamiliar with what is going to happen, is like, oh, does this create a complication for Abby in some way? Because it's like you're being saved by the person who killed your father. How do
Yeah,
you
he
feel
saves her
about
life
that?
essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like he he saves her life
Yeah.
straight up. And it's yeah, that's another adds another complication to this all,
Because
right?
in a way,
So,
like I'm not saying that redeems Joel, but it also feels like, oh, that could be a way to break the cycle of violence or the cycle of repetition, but it
mhm.
doesn't.
But it only
And
takes one person to break it and no one has yet, right?
no.
Like so I think it's as silly as it might be as they randomly cross paths, I think it ultimately works. So then Jesse and Ellie hear from Tommy and say, I can't get to Dina and Joel. Can you like you guys got to go look for them or whatever. So they run out of the 7-Eleven. Um, there's a cute moment with Ellie with the face mask bong and like stuffing weed into her backpack and stuff like that. But then they get this call. So they run out. Joel is helping Abby with Dina. Abby goes, we shouldn't go back to Jackson. Oh, at this point, the tendrils in the town get activated and the horde splits off from Abby and Joel and them, right? Because Joel and Abby and Dina are running away on their horses from this horde. And it's really cool sequences in the mountain of just what seemingly is hundreds of infected chasing after them. And another horde gets awoken because of the tendrils getting, a guy is trying to pull out all the weeds and he doesn't realize that he's activating the tendrils as he's
We've all
pulling
been
at the
there.
weeds. Yeah, exactly. So then the horde gets activated towards Jackson. So the
Yeah.
two different hordes kind of almost like 2 points of a river flowing into one thing, right? Like they
Well, it's a
connect and they all
flood, right?
start.
And Jackson's
Yeah.
almost become like a dam
Yes,
where it's trying
exactly.
to protect. Like, I think one of the best like pieces of sound design in this episode is when, and obviously, World War Z did this a little bit as well, but when the horde hits those
The
gates
wooden gates,
and you
yeah.
hear it, and it's like there's like the mind of this group of infected, it's just that it doesn't care, right?
It's
Like
just trying to find a way in,
yeah.
right? It doesn't matter at any cost. They'll just smash their brains into the wall, and then the next ones will start climbing. It's really, really cool. And so, yeah, it splits off and heads towards Jackson. Jackson starts ringing
I'm
the
sorry, Miss
alarm bells,
Jackson.
and
Woo.
this shit's for real, for real. So they start activating the alarms, and everyone, the elderly and children run into the basements. Tommy and Maria and the rest of the town go up onto the a very Game of Thrones White Walkers kind of sequence of everyone getting up onto the gates and on the wall and prepping for this attack. It really felt like the HBO classic like war, Game
In
of Thrones
snow.
episode.
we,
Yeah, like
we need
yeah,
war in snow.
yeah.
I mean, I'd like
So
to know what Seth is doing right now. I think he's still making some steak
yeah.
sandwiches.
So then you have the three panes of action, like I mentioned, between
And that feels like
uh
Star Wars, right? Like
yeah.
that is like the classic thing, like in every like Return of the Jedi specifically, but in all of the original trilogy, you have multiple story threads of action going on. You have like Lando flying the Millennium Falcon in Return of the Jedi as Luke fights Vader for the final time, and
Yeah.
the stuff that's going on Endor. Like it feels like it is taking that classic structure of fantasy sci-fi in these
Yeah.
moments.
And I like the multiple planes of action. Like, I know there've been a little bit of criticism being like it takes away from Joel's kind of death, that sequence, because you keep kind of have this big action sequence that you're cutting to instead of just being fully dramatic almost. But I don't know, I kind of like the multiple panes of action. So we have
Pain, definitely pain
yeah, so you have
of action.
the town is getting attacked. They're throwing barrels of gasoline or something onto the infected. They're shooting them. They're blowing those up with torches. It's an awesome action sequence. As this is happening, Abby is telling Joel and Dina to come to the lodge because all of her friends are there and they can help them. So, because Joel wants to go back. He sees Jackson and the fires that are happening in the distance and the horde that's going towards Jackson. And obviously he's thinking of probably Ellie and Tommy and Maria and their son and stuff like that. So Joel wants to head back to Jackson, but Abby's saying we'll never make it. It's, we're already all being frostbitten. The storm is crazy. Like we can't do anything by going back there. Let's go back to the lodge. My friends can help. And then we'll go over to Jackson.
And that's also why you're
Mhm.
thinking, oh no, this is not good. This is
No,
really not
absolutely.
good.
Yeah. So, you cut back to Jackson, where the infected breach the wall. So they end up, running away from the gates because they can't get through the main gates. And, there's a bloater with them as well.
Every
Um,
time I hear that word, I laugh.
That's a bloater, baby.
We got a
So
bloater.
so the bloater kind of is the one that breaks through a weakness in the wall. So then the infected breach the wall and get into the town. Then you get this absolutely wild sequence where there's just hundreds of infected running through the town.
It's pure
Uh,
carnage and
just
chaos.
chaos, carnage. You have people on the roof shooting them, people from the wall shooting, people on the streets with flamethrowers. You have a couple cowards who run away. Tommy's stuck there with his flamethrower. You can kind of Maria and Tommy are kind of clocking each other and always looking for where each other are to kind of keep an eye out for one another. So when Maria's shooting at the bloater, you have Tommy kind of seeing that the bloater realizes that he's taking shots from Maria. So the bloater is going towards Maria, and Tommy, being, a protector, shoots his pistol at the bloater to lure it away. He runs down an alleyway and gets cornered by the bloater. And then you've already mentioned this. Did you mention it on air or off air? I
The
forget.
flamethrower?
The thing sequence.
Yeah, like I mentioned this, I think, as we were recording, but also I just want to quickly mention with like the actual wall part of it. Like what I really loved about that was the strategy of taking the barrels of gasoline, right, of oil, and throwing that, throughout the horde, and not like, setting on fire right away, but kind of
letting it spread a little bit.
Yeah, so that it can, optimize as much of a distance between the two using fire. I think,
Yeah, I thought that was
it's
cool.
all very
Yeah.
strategic, obviously, and planned. But yeah, when Tommy puts on that flamethrower, you're just like, oh, we're getting a bloater for dinner tonight, baby.
So do you like sauteed mushrooms? Because that's
You want to know where the steak comes from?
So yeah, sauteed mushrooms and steak for dinner. So yeah, this bloater, at this point you think Tommy's a goner, right? Like,
Yeah.
it is giving big Game of Thrones energy in the sense of, oh, anyone could die at any moment. Maria could go, Tommy could go, Dina could go, anyone could go. I
This
think
is
the only
also
person,
where, and I feel bad saying this because it's not that, but for a moment, I thought, oh, are they going to do a Walking Dead thing where, they kill off Glenn, right? Like they kill off him
Yeah.
with the baseball bat, but then they also killed off the other character. So they're going to do like a 2-for-1 where they really surprise you in that moment, and they kill off
Tommy.
these two brothers, right?
Yeah.
But luckily, the writing doesn't treat its characters like they're garbage. So yeah.
Yeah. Tommy survives. He kills the bloater. Maria, is having a battle on the rooftops with a bunch of infected. She kind of John Wicks her way throughout the building to try to find Tommy. We then cut back to, I think now we're getting to the point of the climax of the episode, where Joel arrives with Abby and Dina at the lodge. Um, Dina is frostbitten in her hand. Joel is absolutely freezing, but they get into the lodge. Abby informs her crew to help Dina, like help her and help them, because Owen comes to Abby right away. And Abby has this one moment where she says, help them, which I thought was interesting. Right? Like she doesn't just say help her or whatever.
Well, she's
It's
probably
almost like
still
she's
in
struggling,
shock, right?
and
As
struggling
well.
with it too, of going, what do I do in this moment? That I've waited so long. It's been 5 years
And this
since
guy
the
helped me.
events. Yeah, it's been 5 years since since this man killed, my dad. And I've been looking for him for 5 years. I've been training. I've been waiting for this
Eating tossed
moment.
salad and scrambled eggs.
It's finally here. I finally found this man, and he saved my life. But I'm sure in this moment she's still kind of struggling with everything. So she says, help them. And then she doesn't reveal who Joel is. She's like, her name is Dina. And then Mel, I believe, is helping Dina with her hand and says, I want to bandage it up and we have to warm you up. Owen is with Abby. And then she's like, and his name is Joel. And you kind of see, Danny Ramirez and Tati Gabrielle as Manny and Nora and the rest of Abby's crew. Kind of great performances, just like kind of like, oh fuck.
Well, this is when the other shoe drops, right?
Exactly,
Like,
where they all realize she found him and brought him there. And I think what's played out much differently in this sequence too is that her crew isn't as encouraging as in the game. I think they're all like kind of,
well, they are, but they're also thinking to themselves,
yeah.
because I don't think we talked about this. Owen, in another earlier scene, is trying, like before, I think as Abby's going out on patrol.
Well, he says he wants to make her go home.
Yeah,
right?
it's like, okay,
Yeah.
let's like try to convince her to go home. Like that's the
I
other
did mention
plan.
that earlier.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't listening because I don't listen. But I think like that is really important. Like, I think like that is like showing like it's not even reluctance. It's just like, oh, we're trying. Like, I feel like Owen in that moment is almost like Jesse, where he's trying to put the greater good, and trying to help the people around him. And like, obviously he cares about Abby, and he wants to help her do this thing, even though maybe he doesn't completely agree with it, but also he understands how much she has been devastated by this. But he can also see like, okay, well, I have these other people that are here with me, and I don't want them to get hurt, and I don't want you to get hurt. And are we going to get ourselves killed in the
Yeah.
process? And so like I like that about him as well, because he's not necessarily maniacal. Like, I feel Danny Ramirez is a
Yes.
little bit
Manny's a little bit
more
more spiteful, a little bit more
like
kind
he's
of violent.
into
Yeah.
like he's just looking for an excuse.
Absolutely. Where you can see Mel and Owen and even Nora being a little bit more removed from it, right? Like, still
Yeah. It's
Abby's
almost like,
friend,
are we
still
doing
support.
this?
Yeah, like, still very supportive of her, but like also hesitant towards the whole thing, or just want to get it over with, right? Like, where Abby really wants to torture Joel, we'll get to, where I think all of them were just like, let's just kill him and get this over with, right? So then as he says that, they kind of, like you said, the other shoe drops, they all realize what's happening. And then in a very shocking moment, much like the game, Abby just grabs a shotgun and puts one into Joel's kneecap, right? And shit starts to go down.
And that's when I
So
think you kind of know
what's about to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially if you've played the game. Like, if you've
Well,
played the
of
game,
course, yeah.
you pretty much are like, okay, they're
Well, you
doing
knew what was happening when he goes to the lodge.
Yeah,
But yeah.
but once he gets shot in the leg, I think anybody like game wise knows at this point it's over. And then once you get the insert shot of the golf club, you're like, this is
Well,
game
if you
over.
play the game, you're like, oh, okay, you know exactly what's about to happen. But as I still think maybe if you don't know the game, you're going, how is Joel going to get
Get
of
out of
this?
this.
Right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if you Matt, as a fan, as a fanatic, as somebody that knows this thing inside out, as soon as you saw him get shot in the kneecap,
You knew it
you're
was
like,
over. Yeah.
it's done.
Well, because again, up until this moment, I wondered, are they going to do something different because of the attack on Jackson, because he was with Dina instead of Tommy, because of all these different things? I'm like, are they going to try to do something surprising and have him get out of this situation and do it a different way? I thought maybe they're going to do that. But ultimately, I think what's best for the story is to stick to what made the original story great. Yes, you add some context in why Abby is doing what she's doing, but otherwise you're sticking pretty close to the main story beats. So Abby puts one into Joel's kneecap, um, and then has this great monologue to him about how he killed 18 people in Salt Lake City. First she goes, do you know who we are? And then he goes, well, because you look like military, you look like fireflies.
They're not
And
raiders.
then,
That's
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, because he says, if you want to rob us, just rob us.
Do we look like raiders?
Because they put a gun to Dina's head before they shot Joel in the leg, and he just thought they were trying to rob them. So he assumes after that they're not trying to rob him and that they are fireflies. And then she goes, "I'll give you one chance. Don't lie to me. Like, if you tell me the truth, I'll let her live," pointing to Dina, saying, "When's the last time you saw the fireflies?" And then Joel kind of hesitates for a second, but then ultimately says Salt Lake City. And then she goes, "Okay, well, at least you're not a liar," or something like that, or at least you're telling the truth. And then she goes on a wonderful monologue about how without hesitation he killed 18 people at that Salt Lake City hospital. Um, when she was talking to the nurses that survived, they talked to saying he was about 6 foot, in his 60s, and handsome. And she goes, "You are handsome." She's like, "Good for you." And then she's like, "And there was one doctor that you was unarmed, that without hesitation you shot in the head, basically stepped over his dead body and never thought about him at all. And you just took her and left, and that person was my dad." So at this moment, I think putting it up front is a good choice, because I think it really connects, you know, Abby and Ellie at this moment as kind of mirrored characters, right? Like, uh, because what we're going to see is Ellie arrives at the lodge and finds the two horses and comes in and witnesses what ultimately is about to happen. But having Abby experience Joel killing her father, and now Ellie experiencing Abby killing what's essentially her father, I think makes for a great juxtaposition, a great mirrored characters, and I think putting that up front and giving you that context is in television, at least, was probably the best call. Um, so at this point, she gives this great monologue, really good performance from Caitlin Dever. I think she's doing great as Abby. And then that thing that we talked about last episode too, the meta kind of thing of her originally going to play Ellie in the movie, the Sam Raimi movie and stuff like that. And I think is really perfect. And then basically at this point she starts beating Joel with a golf club, so hitting him repeatedly in the leg where she shot him. They put a tourniquet on him too, so he stopped bleeding. Because
so a belt. Yeah.
Because in the first episode, remember, she said we're going to kill him and we're going to do it slowly. So she beats him with a golf club. Off screen, we cut back to Ellie, who, what I just mentioned, finds the two horses at the lodge. Clearly a little bit of time has passed because Abby is just, beating the shit out of Joel. Basically, his face is all fucked up. This
is Game of Thrones all over again now, where no eye gouging in this one. But there is that line as well that I liked when Abby's doing her whole villain speech, and he's like, just get
shut the fuck up and just do it already.
Yeah,
I thought that was great. Yeah, it's such a good moment from Joel. And
but I also think it's a good line, like meta line for audience members, where it's like, we don't need to hear your grand scheme. We've already heard it. Like let's get it on. Let's get over with. I
don't care what it is. Joel knows he's probably done a lot of fucked up stuff to a lot of people, and probably ultimately understands that he probably deserves it. And
his time is up.
Yeah. So I think he's just like, just do it. And I think what makes this whole thing hurt the most is, Ellie, as complicated as we've seen in that first episode and, the lie at the end of last season, and we don't know what their relationship truly is at this point, but Ellie comes back, comes into the lodge, sees Joel kind of on the ground, still alive, but being beaten by Abby. She's pinned down first she cuts Manny, right, with a switchblade. But is held down and pinned down.
And then Manny just goes berserk on her.
Yeah. Manny goes a bit crazy. And then that basically Ellie has to watch now while Abby ultimately finishes Joel off. So I think it's Owen who just says, Abby, just end it. Like, end this. Yeah. Like, let's finish this. So she ultimately stabs Joel in the neck with the broken golf club, killing Joel. At this point, like Ellie is, there's this moment where she keeps yelling, Joel, get up, and you can see he like makes eye contact with her and kind of like sort of pushes himself up a little bit, and then Abby ultimately ends it. And then Ellie swears that she's going to, kill Abby and all of her friends, but then they leave her alive, which I think is interesting. And not knowing, I think they think Dina might be Ellie at this moment too, like when Dina and Joel are together, but
yeah,
I forget if Ellie
does Abby even realize that, like, again, maybe this is a spoiler to the
I don't think
game,
she knows that she's immune, right?
Well, no, not the immune thing, but does Abby even know that Joel is her father, essentially?
No, father figure. I don't think so. But
yeah.
A absolutely, like, devastating, heartbreaking sequence when you have Ellie just, a great performance by Bella Ramsey. Just, after this happens, their crew leaves. Manny is the one that kind of kicks Ellie in the ribs, right, and spits on her, and then
and it's pretty nasty. Like it's something where, like, not getting too far into it, but like it does feel like, okay, it actually is considering how injuries take longer to heal, especially in this kind of world where medicine maybe isn't as readily available. Like, you really appreciate things take time.
Yeah. We didn't also mention that they gave Dina a sedative to put
Yes,
her
to
to
knock her out,
sleep
and
as
they say
well.
that
Yeah.
we're gonna put you out. It's
For an
better,
hour.
yeah. Or do you want me to like actually knock you out? You know?
Yeah. So they all leave Ellie alive, and she kind of uh goes up to Joel and holds him as he basically passes away. Because I think he's still alive for a few moments while she kind of holds him. And it's really like it gets even tougher, but like there's even with more context and everything. But um just, he's a complicated dude. Yeah, I don't agree with anything he did, but I think their bond that we fell in love with in that first season and makes you understand where he was coming from at the end of season 1, even if you don't agree with his methods. And the same can be said about Abby, and if we learn more about, her methods and what her story, like we'll probably I think that's what makes, this such a great story. But I think Jesse then finds them, correct? Like
Yeah.
does Jesse find them? And then yeah, Joel's gone. And we have this moment of Jackson's kind of recovering from, I don't know how they killed them all, but they killed all of the infected.
It's still
Um,
it still feels more of a defeat than it does a victory
yeah,
because of the loss that they've had. I mean, obviously Joel, but also they've had other casualties in the town as well, and so this really does feel like, you know, it, it's peaked television that leaves you emotionally devastated, and so when you're watching all of this, like as it's ending, you're kind of left like you feel like you've had the wind knocked out of you.
absolutely. And that's the risk in this game and this show, to do an episode like this so early in season 2, killing off one of your main characters and doing it in such a devastating way, and having a character like Abby who is the villain but then is also sympathetic or wanting you to sympathize with her, is a very, very challenging thing, right? And I felt like the game did a great job with it, and I think the show is doing a good job, but it's still hard, until she's still the villain at this point,
Yeah.
because they kill off your hero, your main character. And even if it's complicated at the end of season 1 what he's done or what he's done over his life, but he's still the main character. He's still Pedro Pascal. He's still, Ellie and Joel were a pair, right? And as much
To
as
quote
they,
John Wick, there are consequences to the choices,
yeah,
and that feels like, we were talking about this. There's opportunity in this episode to end that cycle of violence,
yeah,
but instead the choice is to continue that. And when Abby makes that choice, she gets the revenge that she wants, but what she doesn't realize is that what
it,
she did to Joel, she's going to have to pay for that in some way. And then Ellie is going to be what Abby was. You're just
exactly.
passing it
And that's
off to you're just
the
passing it off
cycle
to Ellie.
continues, right? So that's, I think what makes this kind of a brilliant, interesting story, especially in this world where you can kind of get away with violence, right? Like there is no law. The only law is, other, what other people set out, because Fedra's gone, the government's gone, and all this stuff. So, and
Well, it's
Fedra was
lawless,
corrupt
right?
too.
Like
Yeah, it is
it
lawless. Yeah.
feels, this is where it comes into like to the Western aspect of it. Like it's a lawless, not even like
It's
a
like
lawless country.
self-imposed
It's,
law, right?
yeah.
Like it's just, yeah, it's so Jackson is recovering. They've
I'm
killed all the
sorry, Miss
infected, but
Jackson.
they stop it. So then they're kind of devastating losses, but they're trying to kind of recover from that. And then we have Jesse taking Ellie and Dina, and we see them riding off with their horses towards Jackson, with Joel's body in tow in a makeshift body bag being dragged by the horse. And I think that's where we end this episode, on a very somber, quiet note. I don't even think there's music in the credits or anything.
No, no, but the Ashley Johnson
Oh,
song, I
Ashley
believe.
Johnson's song, is
Yeah,
that in the credits?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, Through the Valley, which is what the episode is called. And that song was used in a trailer for The Last of Us, with Ellie um singing it in the trailer, which was Ashley Johnson. So that's that's why they used that. Yeah. So that's season 2,
It's a
episode
feel bit
2.
bad episode of television.
It is, man. And like I was mentioning, it's challenging because I feel like, you know, I think a different kind. I understand people's anger, right, and their hate towards, the character of Abby at this moment. Um, I don't get the people who are like, I'm not watching anymore because they killed off Joel or killed off Pedro Pascal. Because I just feel like that's immature to me. I mean, to each their own. Do whatever you want, but to stop watching a television show before they tell you the whole story because they kill a character you like, I think you're a baby. like just judge it when you've seen the whole story, right? Just because I think it's just like, go watch Minecraft if you want a safe space to not challenge your, media literacy of like watching something. I think great shows and great stories can be challenging, and they might kill off characters that you love and see if they earned that, right? Like without just jumping ship because you like an actor or you like a character. You're like, well, I'm not watching anymore because they killed off this person. I think that's like, I'm usually not as aggressive when it comes to people's opinions, because watch what you want to watch, don't watch what you don't want to watch. That's fine. But if it's because they kill off a character you like, or an actor, I'm like, come on, give me a break. Then you never really cared about the show.
Yeah, I can understand not like, cutting off a show because of that. I can understand it being a hard to watch because it's so brutal, and it's
So
also so
that's a great
depressing,
point.
and like
Levis
it's
had to tap out, and
yeah,
it's a bummer. It's a bummer because I love this series and wanted her to experience it or love it as much as I do. But she is someone who does not enjoy the brutality of certain things and the gore and the violence. And it's not something that, even with what I would say is a great payoff in this story, it is a hard watch, right? It is a hard story to consume.
yeah.
And especially if those things make you uncomfortable or make you queasy or disturb you
Or
in a
just
way.
depress you, I
Well,
think we live
because
in a
again,
very
that's the
depressing
intention.
time. No, definitely. I agree with that, and, like, when it comes to movies, I'm all about depressing films and
Sure.
feeling miserable, but there is a feeling as
It's not for
well.
everyone though.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with television where, you sometimes I think people, especially with TV, like, they come to escape, right? Like, there's that
Yeah.
feeling of, like, oh, you wanna watch something that takes you out of your funk, or makes you kind of feel like, oh, you're in another world that like you can enjoy, and like it's beautifully made. It is well acted.
But it
The
is
score,
depressing as
this
hell.
it is like you do not. You feel like you just want to crawl into a hole after watching this show, and I
But
don't know if
there
that's an
is some
endorsement or not,
but there
but I get that. I get
but there
that.
are moments though that I think are such wonderful payoffs that are really lovely moments. And I know that, you know, it's there is a lot of love through characters, and they show that in fucked up ways, don't get me wrong, and
Well, it's human.
depressing ways.
It's very
But
human.
I know, and that's what I no pun intended, love about it. And I don't blame anyone for if what you said is it's too much, they're not, I don't blame anyone. There's certain things now as I get older where I'm like, I don't want to watch something that's just violent for the sake of being violent if I'm not getting anything from it. And I told Nevis, being like, okay, if this is too much, then I think you should tap out, because I think it gets even more brutal.
I'm watching
And
Matlock.
yeah, it gets more brutal, and it doesn't pull its punches when it comes to its brutality at all. Um, and it is a depressing show. So if it's not for you, it's not for you. And I understand that. So I don't want me being, defensive over the choice of killing off Joel. Um, I wish Joel was around longer, dude. I loved playing as Joel in that first game. I loved the relationship between Ellie and Joel. I was devastated when they did that in the second game. I was too. But
Hashtag justice for Joel.
you're supposed to be devastated, but and I think it's worth it, but I also understand if you can't do it. I almost want to make a PG-13 cut of The Last of Us, so I could share it with Nevis and stuff like that. But
But you know what I'm saying though,
it
with
is an
like
intense
the
thing.
feeling that some people have towards entertainment as being
I like it
entertaining
for
as positive,
escapism.
right?
Escapism, yeah,
Yeah. Like I'm
and
not even comparing The Last of Us to The Zone of Interest, but like the idea of saying, yes, The Zone of Interest is a movie you should see. You need to watch it theatrically if when it was out, if you could. It's also not going to be entertainment. It's not
but I
going to be a
understand the comparison to this.
yeah.
This is entertainment too, I think, because of
I do as well
um
because of the zombie, the infected part of it. Like it is
yeah.
like that is
It's
like the
still an
science.
action
Yeah,
thriller horror kind of story, but there is a lot of depressing
it's
emotional
morose.
moments. Yeah.
It's very morose, and I do feel like some people, like especially on what this is a Sunday night show, right? You're watching this on a Sunday night before going back to work, and you're looking for something that's maybe going to, especially before you're going to bed too, and you're looking for something that's gonna like give you just like a little bit of like I'm going into a new week or even after a long weekend, and I need something as like a pick me up.
Oh, totally. Like
You're not going to get
it's
that from this.
no, and so I don't blame anyone for being like it's too much, or you have to be in the right mood for it or
I
something,
think
right?
that's
Like
fair
it's like
too, right? Like I think like there are
yeah.
days when people like you can just sit down and watch this and appreciate the artistry and the storytelling, but there are some days where it's like I'm just not in the mood for it,
No, and
and
I don't
sometimes
blame anyone.
forcing
It's
that when it's on, that's a hard thing. Like we've talked about this even with movies when it comes to like seeing stuff at TIFF, right? Sometimes you'll see something at TIFF that maybe you weren't in the mindset for, but then you go back and watch it and then you really like it and or you appreciate it more or understand like, oh, it was just maybe like the second movie of the day and I just didn't want to see this type of film or this
Mhm.
this the bleakness of it, and so like it is not feel good entertainment, it's not
No, and on
escapist
top of that, it's
entertainment.
very violent and it's very brutal,
Yeah,
right?
but
So and
cutting it
that's
off
not
just because of Joel dying, I think that I understand your defensiveness because it's like it's not fair to this. It's like you've committed this far, and you're just boycotting it because Joel is dead. We'll say, well, let the story unfold, and like maybe if you're
at
not
the end of the
feeling,
season,
yeah,
if you decide, okay, I still don't want to watch, then sure. But I mean, again, to each their own. Everyone can stop and start whenever they feel like it. Everyone can do their
press
thing. But
pause like on a game.
um, yeah. So, um, but I think it's if you're listening to this and you're on the fence, if the fence is collapsing in on you,
Yes,
and you
and you have
you
to
don't
crawl
know.
through like Caitlin Deaver.
I would say it is worth it. We did a whole spoiler-free review that you can listen to as well, but, um, and as someone who's played the game, I think it's a masterpiece. I think, there's a lot and a lot that will unfold over this season and more, both from Ellie and Abby's side of the story.
And it
So,
is dark and it is depressing.
it is, yeah.
But it also makes you kind of feel, at least I do, it's like, okay, well, at least I'm not the only one that has dark and depressing thoughts that, life isn't always great and it's obviously an uphill battle at the best of times. And so with that, it almost feels not comforting, but at least it's an acknowledgement of, you're not
I
the
think
only one thinking how fucked up things can get.
no, or I even think from the other side of it of going, if someone harmed someone you love, what would you do, right?
It
And
puts you in
like,
the shoes of those characters.
yeah, and you'd go, well, I'd want to fucking kill them. Like
Yeah.
if someone killed, my wife or my
I want to
family
take
or
up
my
golf.
parents. Yeah. So anyways, I think it's an amazing episode. And we'll see how it kind of plays out over the next 6 episodes, 4 or 5 more. It's
Yeah,
only
because it's
7
not
episodes,
long,
right?
right? 7 episodes
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah, so 5 more episodes after this, and we'll see how it all plays out. Thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate it. We have another podcast we'd love for you guys to go check out called the Untitled Movie Podcast. We just put up a review of another television series, Andor Season 2. So Andor Season 2 and Last of Us Season 2 both coming out at the same time. So that the first 3 episodes of Andor just premiered on Disney Plus, and we have a review out for the whole season, spoiler free. Eric has an interview with Genevieve O'Reilly and Stellan Skarsgård that will be out, that you guys can listen to as well. We'll have reviews out for Sinners, for The Legend of Ochi, for what else am I missing?
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn. Oh, there you go. Another horror video game from Sony. So that's exciting as well. So we really appreciate it. One-stop shop for everything is over on Untitled_movies over on Letterboxd. Eric's got a interview with David Cronenberg coming out. That'll be awesome for the Shrouds. And then you
Upcoming
can
star of Ready or Not, Here I Come.
Yeah. And then you can follow us on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck and at EM6211. Until next time.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Woo! I am for real.
Rest in peace, Joel.